So what was the hardest part in those years? Again, you were in your mid-30s. Do you remember what the hardest adjustment was?
Yeah, I just remember feeling afraid to eat anything.
At what point did you discover that it was the other hormones in the body? Because as we know, insulin is a hormone.
Myself, I have been more fearful of the highs just because I've
Yeah,
had people in my life and other, people I know that have had, the complications that come along with high
yeah.
blood sugars over time. I had a lot of trouble when the G7 first came out, but I didn't realize that I had a lot of sensor stale, and I didn't realize at the time that I should be wearing it on my arm and no longer on my abdomen.
Well, hello, listeners. We're glad you're here today. Many women with type 1 diabetes in midlife, 40-ish and over, they're not just managing the insulin, they're also managing the hormones that seem like they're all over the place. The fear of whether it's complications, burnout, the day to day. And we're all just trying to hold it all together, aren't we? So today, Alyssa, I'm so glad that you came in to share you and your story with our listeners. This really means a lot to me.
Thank you.
So what are you hoping that everybody walks away with? Maybe if it's just one little piece of advice or a nugget.
Yeah, I think for me, just letting others know that they're not alone. I think sometimes when
Yeah.
we're in our own regular circle, it feels like maybe we're the only ones, or I felt that way. I was the only one that
Yeah.
had type 1. So it's nice to surround yourself with other people so you just know you're not alone in how you're feeling.
Yeah. Totally agree with that. Totally agree. So let's go back to your diagnosis, and you just said something that points to that because you were diagnosed a little bit later in life. So talk about adjustment, right? So if you wanted to
Yeah.
share that story where you were, how that has shaped where you are today. And I know that's been a journey, as it is for many of us.
Yeah, still learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a shock. Nobody in my
Mm,
family has type 1. We
mm,
have some type 2s, and classic symptoms. I just associated it with other things like maybe I needed to eat cleaner, or I just felt
right.
really tired a lot and was noticing patterns of that. And then I kind of over, I would say a couple months, noticed some patterns of after I'd eat, I'd feel real tired and fatigued.
Mm,
And then a few other symptoms started showing up that were pretty clear, going to the bathroom a lot in the middle of the night. And I just kept putting, assuming it was something else. And finally, I think after a couple months, I had just horrendous thirst and just started dropping
mm,
weight really easy, which I've always kind of had to work at. But so I knew something was really, really off.
right.
And at that point, I'm like, I wonder if it's blood sugars. So I finally scheduled an appointment, and luckily, I was so lucky that my doctor recognized it right away. We immediately did a blood sugar test. I know not everybody's been that lucky.
It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really grateful that I didn't get misdiagnosed because I was 34 at the time, and I know that happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember what test they did exactly? I mean, was it just a glucose test? Like an A1C, or
Yeah,
your
it was
current?
an
I was just curious.
A1C. Yeah, and I think I was
Okay.
averaging. My A1C was 14, so yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really high. I think that I'm super lucky I didn't end up in the hospital because if I'd waited much longer,
Right.
wouldn't have
Didn't
worked out
necessarily.
so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. And the fact that you were diagnosed at the very beginning, it's like you say, and you're meeting people in the community. So these are, and we'll get more into that as how plugged in you are into, a lot of other women, that have gone through, but everybody's got
Yeah.
their own story. But there is so much misdiagnosis when you're after the age of, and I'm not even sure what that is anymore. I think it seems to be all ages where they're just assuming it's type 2. They start you on the oral meds and it's such a simple thing to just kind of rule out, right? Take the right test, whether it's a C-peptide, just to see if the pancreas is doing anything at that point, or like you with an A1C that was clearly in the type 1 range, right? Yeah. So that's really
Yeah.
cool that you didn't have to kind of go through that LADA experience. Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the hardest part in those years? Again, you were in your mid-30s. Do you remember what the hardest adjustment was?
Yeah. I just remember feeling afraid to eat anything.
Afraid to eat. Yeah.
I remember going home that day, getting diagnosed, and then the days after, just trying to dial everything in and figure out what doses of insulin I needed to be on. And I was just afraid of eating any carbs at all. So yeah, that was a real fear for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And women diagnosed later in life are also managing the careers,
Mhm.
marriage, children, all those things. So you had that to juggle as well. And I think it's not only just accepting the diagnosis and trying to kind of find some sort of a pattern with it or routine with it, but it's also how that affects the home and your marriage and all those other relationships. So how was that? Do you remember? Sometimes it's funny. We have to really think about the past, really to remember how we were feeling, because when we're in it, we're not necessarily understanding how it's impacting us. But I think it's easier to kind of recognize it after the years.
Yeah, it is hard to remember. It feels like it was such a whirlwind. But I do remember, like, every time I check my blood sugar and I'd see it kind of in a higher range than what was acceptable to me, um, I would show visibly that frustration. And I do think it filtered, through to my relationship at the time.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, juggling career. And honestly, I felt a little embarrassed. So I didn't want anybody to
Mm,
know that I was a type one
mm,
or any kind of diabetic, because people's perceptions, I had to really get over that. Now I'm all open about it. And,
yeah. Yeah.
it's just, it helps other people understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. I went through that too in my earlier years. And, we're in a different time now with more awareness and obviously the internet, right? What will we do with
Yeah.
all the information coming at us? Sometimes it's too much information. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a clear awareness of all diseases, but especially this one. But there's still a distinction that people don't understand. I don't know about you, but I continue to have to feeling like we have to kind of better explain. A term I've been using more than just type 1, because have you ever noticed if somebody, like if you just happen to say, I live with type 1 diabetes, people are like, I don't quite understand what that means, or they immediately put it into what they just know about diabetes, which is people who are overweight, poor lifestyle, their blood sugar's out of control. But they don't understand the difference between those of us who basically have an organ that doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
And this is not a judgment against which type of diabetes, but just a clear understanding of the difference. And so I've been saying, instead of type 1, sometimes I catch myself and I say insulin dependent. And sometimes that'll even throw them off because, oh, okay. But at least it brings the insulin into the conversation, because I think it's diabetes, sugar. That's all people kind of correlate, right? The
Yeah.
general population, they just think, oh, you can't have sugar, you know. Yeah,
So true.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you
And you know
throw,
what? It's changed my view of any kind of diabetes too.
oh,
We don't fully understand. So many people deal with it. And even though type 2 is different, it's just something that, to raise awareness that it's not, your fault.
right. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, no matter what the diagnosis,
No.
it's something that was handed to us, or kind of challenged, we were challenged with. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's not your fault. It's really understanding the why. And in our case, it's definitely an autoimmune decision our body had to kind of come up under. But
Yeah.
but type 2 is just as hard. And I know you're getting to know more and more in the diabetes sisters space. So you're
Hmm.
meeting women with all, again, types of diagnosis, but we are very similar, aren't we? When it comes to just that
Yeah.
mindset and really the day to day of what we have to kind of juggle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about, let's jump into hormones. This is a big part of what you and I personally have been able to kind of walk through together. So what's happening now that you are, again, midlife? Generally speaking,
Mhm.
midlife is after 40. So what changed for you when you were obviously still managing type 1, and then the hormonal shifts came up? What kind of symptoms were you noticing that kind of made you kind of raise your hand and saying, this is a little different?
I kind of felt like getting diagnosed at 34. I did kind of get, and I was doing multiple daily injections. I did kind of get,
Oh,
seems somewhat predictable. And
Mhm.
then all of a sudden I noticed things shifting. Like I was doing all the same things, but all of a sudden I would have 2 days where I would be low, 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 couldn't keep my blood sugars up high enough. And nothing really made sense. And then there would be other weeks where it was the opposite. And so what worked for me before kind of seemed to change
Yeah.
throughout the month. And
Yeah.
that was very frustrating and kind of scary at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, absolutely. At what point did you discover that it was the other hormones in the body? Because as we know, insulin is a hormone.
Yeah.
Thyroid is a hormone. Vitamin D is technically processed in the body like a hormone. And our endos, our doctors are not necessarily putting all these hormones together in one conversation. But at what point did you discover that, hey, maybe it's my estrogen and my progesterone? I'm 40-ish. This is a different stage. So maybe this is part of what's impacting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of trial and error. I started tracking my symptoms
Mm.
to see if I could see some
Ah.
patterns.
Hmm.
And I really noticed that it was kind of evolving or it was happening around my cycle, like very insulin resistant the week before, and then low, low, low the week after. And that
Yeah.
was really a telling for me. So I kind of just started to figure it out on my own and then dove all in to try to figure that out. But there just wasn't a lot of information out there to help.
No.
And when, I talked to my doctors and they didn't seem to have anything extra to say about it either. So for
Hmm.
me, it was just tracking patterns and then doing kind of my own research.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And that's something I didn't even know to even consider back in my days when I was still in
Yeah.
my, cycling months, was to pay attention to that. I just thought, again, I was never educated in this either. So I didn't even have the wherewithal before doing all the studying and training I've done in this space to even consider it, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's funny. I think that's the good part about what's happening now, is that there is more talk about this. Menopause, perimenopause, is definitely a word in our vocabulary now. So we can put all that together and understand the change. And in some cases, maybe we're teaching our doctor. Do you feel that way sometimes when you're going in?
Yeah.
You're having to ask the right questions in the right way in order to, because you know which way you need to go with the conversation and the care you
Mhm.
need from your doctors. Do you find yourself almost teaching or yeah, teaching
Yeah.
the
And that's a
doctors?
delicate
We'll call it the
balance.
way it is, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't yeah, it's a delicate balance, and I think that's why it's,
Yeah.
like, so important to find an endocrinologist that will, listen
Listen.
and
Yes.
hear
Yeah.
you and is willing to consider not I mean, it's good that we've listened to each other, but just finding that right
Mhm.
personality to work with you on that, so
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, that's for sure. So where are you right now with your stage, if you don't mind sharing with the audience, because
yeah.
I'm sure they're curious as to what type of, like the pump or CGM that you're using, and how are you handling the hormonal shifts right now? So what does that look like in your
I'm still
protocol?
learning. Yeah, learning every day. Your group sessions have been huge. I kind of felt like, I don't know, I was kind of feeling like for a while, I've kind of, I know quite a bit, but it never replaces being surrounded by other women going through the
Mm-hmm.
same thing. So I've
Mm-hmm.
learned a ton. And I just turned 50 last year. So still going through perimenopause, which, like I said, I'm still trying to figure things out. I've had
Yeah.
struggles with sleep a lot, just waking up in the middle of the night. And then the stubborn weight gain has just been a
Mm-hmm.
big frustration for me, which I still haven't figured out. But,
Okay.
I'm doing the best I can. And I think
Yeah.
I'm much better off had I been being my own advocate than I would have been
Yeah.
otherwise.
Most definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So talk more about what you were just referring to as our type 1 in midlife. So we have a coaching circle, and Alyssa,
Mhm.
you are a member of that. We love having you in there. What have you, when you started, what did you walk in with as far as what was on your plate, and what has felt a little more clear? I know you and I, obviously you and I talk privately in our one-on-one sessions, because I know there's some things that you're kind of walking through right now, and share what you're comfortable sharing. But what have you discovered, and what are you continuing to see kind of play out? Because it does take time, doesn't it? It doesn't, it's
Yes.
not like flipping a switch. Body does take time to get everything kind of back into some sort of an optimal range so that you feel better. Yeah.
Yeah. As you were asking that question, so many things went through my mind. But I think the biggest thing when I came into your group was I was having this cyclical fatigue where it would happen every couple of weeks. And I'd finally found a functional medicine practitioner, and we had decided to increase my progesterone because right now I am on HRT. So
Hmm.
a little bit of estrogen patch. And then I was on a couple hundred milligrams of progesterone, and we bumped that up to 100. And if I honestly look back, that was a cyclical, that's when that started, that cyclical every 2 weeks, having a lot of fatigue. So your group kind of helped me figure out that that dose may have been too high. And
Yeah,
I'm still making adjustments now, but that alone was
sure.
was a big realization to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, yeah. And then and you did go back to your doctor, and you're lucky to have a practitioner that is ears are open. So she's
Mm.
very receptive of of all these things. So how was that conversation when you brought it and say, "Hey, what do you think if this may be part of why I'm tired, especially the second half, right?" So it was your luteal phase.
Yep.
Towards the end, right? Which is when
Yeah.
progesterone tends to go up. So you were like a little too heavy when it
Yep.
comes to the progesterone. So, which makes us tired. Again, everybody's response is going to be slightly different. But I think the number one thing is you knew what was different. You was like, well,
Mhm.
this is not normal for me. So what changed? Well, this is what changed. So let's see if we can't, uh, you know, change this decision around, what my dosing was. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the conversation went really well. I just told
Yeah.
her exactly what I was experiencing, and I think she's the first practitioner I've had that really is willing to, well, let's try something different then.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge. I
Hmm.
felt heard, which has been new for me, and then told her kind of what I learned, and well, let's try something different now. So we went back. We're continuing just that baseline, and now we're doing some other supplements and testosterone to add some more
Right.
energy back in because my
Right.
my
Right.
levels were low in that area too. And I think from your group, one of the biggest things I've learned too is more paying attention to symptoms than like
Hmm.
test results.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is the best feedback, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, the levels that we can get tested at can be confirming but, something else to consider. And this is definitely a lot of what's going to be covered in my book is perimenopause is like 75% of the book, which I think is going to really, because that is that stage that it is the toughest. It's not only the toughest, but it's the longest for all
Mhm.
women, that is going through, this chaotic time with blood sugar hormones and all that shift. But just knowing that is so important, just understanding, that this is where you were, this is where you are right now. And yeah, it's so good that you had a practitioner. What or that's listening, that's got that open for you. What about is there any other if you don't mind sharing thyroid, is that another part of your equation as well?
It is. I had thyroid cancer long before I was diagnosed with
Yeah.
diabetes. Yes, and I forgot to mention that. That was the other thing
That's
that was
okay. Yeah.
causing
Yeah.
fatigue,
Mhm.
which is funny because I've dealt with that since I was like 25 years old. But I'd been on the same thyroid dose for the last, I don't know, 3 years, and that has been pretty stable. So it really wasn't on
Mhm.
my radar that that might be adding to my fatigue. But yeah, we discovered last month that I was a little
Yeah.
bit hypothyroid.
TSHs. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it's interesting. But I think the number one thing in women, as we're maybe halfway through this conversation today, is to pay attention to the symptoms and how important all these hormones are working together.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. I mean, we can go to one doctor for our thyroid. I mean, we should be going to a endo for all of it, but that's not always the case for everybody. But they should be understanding all of those hormones, insulin, the thyroid hormones, that we may need to replace if we have that condition. And then you've got the reproductive hormones, which I don't know about you, but this is something that, all the studying I've done and I've looked in and I've talked with other doctors, OBGYNs are even you would think an OBGYN are hormone literate. They know all about that because they're taking care of that type that part of our body, but it's so disconnected. And then you go and you say, well, what doctor is a specialist in hormones? Guess what? It is the endocrinologist. So it is in there, but obviously the schooling didn't cover it very well, did they? So
Yeah.
it blows my mind. It's like nobody wants to, kind of own that part of a woman's body and her health. It's getting better, but it's definitely something that's been left out, literally left out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we were just talking about that as I wish that all of your doctors would talk to each other to connect
Each
all the
other.
dots. It would make
Yeah.
so much more
Yeah.
sense. Hopefully in the future we'll move that direction. But you're
Yeah.
right. There's more and more awareness coming about, and that's a good
Yeah.
thing. But I think we're we're ways off. So I think
Yeah.
it's just goes back to what I said. It's huge, like to be your own advocate, and
Yeah.
yep, and don't give up until you find somebody that listens and is willing to
There
work
you
with you.
go.
Yeah.
Absolutely into that. And really, this type of feeling about blood sugar and blood sugar levels is something that I've had to kind of check myself on. And I really think it is the awareness, and it's just understanding that this is something that's in our mind and it's kind of a level of fear. But with you, the fear of highs, of high blood sugars. And I really appreciate you not only sharing it with me personally, but, to say it out loud here too, which really does make a difference because I think there's a lot of attention on fear of lows, which is I think that's one of those more understandable because it could be lows come with a physical, what do I call it? The situation could make you almost feel, well, in most cases, you are incapacitated because when our blood sugars are low, the brain needs glucose. When we can't get the glucose to think straight and to help ourselves, that's when it can get into a very, very dangerous, slippery slope. The fear of highs, I think, it's not really understood because, yeah, what's your relationship with that, whether it's the lows or the highs? But it's not as evident and it's not as, I guess, apparent because we don't walk around with any sort of physical symptoms because it's usually what's happening on the inside. And high blood sugars over time do the damage. But within the situation, they're not necessarily obvious, are they? It just goes to show you
No.
how powerful the mind is with this, right? Yeah.
Right, right, and I definitely yeah, I think this came about in one of our group sessions where I've
Hmm.
realized this over and over. More people seem to talk about being fearful of highs, and myself, I'm sorry, fearful
Fear of
of
going low.
lows, fearful of lows.
Hmm.
And myself, I have been more fearful of the highs just because I've
Yeah.
had people in my life and other people I know that have had the complications that come along with high
Yeah.
blood sugars over time.
Yeah.
And I've probably I've known for a long time that I'm probably just a little too restrictive. I've worn those low A1Cs as like a badge of honor, but
Yeah.
I probably need to loosen that up a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not really a perfectionist about anything. But when it comes to my blood sugars, I really try to be, but I think maybe
Right.
too much in the opposite direction. And part of that
Yeah.
is you need to still feel those lows so you're not at risk of hypo unawareness.
That's
So
so
I'm
true.
trying to let go a little bit, but it's hard.
Yeah, I do understand that's something that really resonates with me too. It continues to be a mindset check that I have to just remind myself. And it's overcorrecting. It's trying to convince ourselves that being at a certain level is okay, even though it can kind of tote the line. It does. I mean, we can tote the line, can't we? Just based on, oh, it's going to be okay. But then and again, it's such a fine line as to what's a good, healthy, average blood sugar and what can be over time dangerous. And, we
Mhm.
talked about brains too, because obviously high blood sugar itself is very inflammatory. But again, our brains need glucose. So over time, it can do damage cognitively. So I don't know about you, but this is something that I'm trying to remind myself of as I'm getting older with type 1 is that I'm trying to look at the big picture and
Mhm.
not get too caught up with, obviously, you might go a little high after a certain dinner, which we can usually point to something. There's always those stubborn highs where, and it might be hormonally driven or, like a pump failure or whatever that is, or, whatever that situation could be. But just to try to be just to be conscientious of really what it really means. And just being at 180 45 minutes overall is not going to do us long-term damage. Is that
Right.
something that you're trying to kind of, it's like you got to look at the big picture. I think we're in it where we want to be able to say, no, I want to stay right here. Going
Yeah.
any higher is it's going to lead to what, right? And then our imagination gets away with us. Yeah.
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think in my past, I have, when you have those days, those numbers are running a little bit higher, or you have a spike after a meal, I have been known to kind of intervene. And I skipped over this. You asked what devices I'm on. I'm on the
Oh,
Omnipod.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's
sorry
right.
about that.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
on the
okay.
Omnipod.
That's okay.
And then from Diabetes Sisters group that I belong to, and when I lived at Denver, I learned about that there's this loop system that was developed by the diabetes community, which gives me extra tighter control. But what I found myself doing is intervening too much when those highs happened. And then
Okay.
I would find myself low. So I'm learning to just let the app do what it's supposed to do. And it's
Mm,
going to get me back in those ranges and,
mhm.
not having as many lows to get there, not
Yeah.
turning to micromanagement.
I can totally relate to that. Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
letting go and have patience, giving it time, letting the, in this case, the pump, the devices to kind of do their job. So what would you, yeah, what did you wish? And this is probably something that you continue to teach yourself and just remind yourself of. So what do you wish women understood more about chasing those perfect numbers, or, let's define what chase or what perfect is. What's perfect,
There
right?
is no perfect.
There is
And
no,
especially at this phase in life, perfection just doesn't exist. So I think it's, doing the best you can. You're going to see patterns. Just pay attention to those and give yourself more grace.
yeah.
Stop trying to control it
Hmm.
so much, but be conscious of your health and what focus on what you can do instead of just constantly
Yeah.
focusing on what's not working.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And a lot of women, I think we just have to remind each other and ourselves that we're not failing at diabetes. It can be exhausting. There's a lot of decisions to be made, but we're trying to influence something that was never meant to be controlled perfectly. I have to constantly remind that the average person with a working pancreas, there's still some a little bit of a roller coaster. Again, it depends on their metabolic health too, because there could be something indicative going on with them personally. But in general, after you eat, there is going to be a rise. That is going to be part of just the whole process. And then you think about all the other things that control, or I don't like the word control. I mean influence that can
Yeah.
kind of poke at our blood sugar, stress, lack of sleep, all the things that we continue to learn more about.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about Diabetes Sisters. I'm a big supporter of them. I mentioned them here quite a bit on the show. I've had a couple other of the leaders being a guest here on the show, speaking about the organization. They kind of rebranded themselves. Oh gosh, it's probably been a couple years now, maybe 2 years. Tell us about what you're doing with Diabetes Sisters, how you got involved, because I know you love to be, lead and to be part of a community like this.
Yeah, I lived in Colorado for several years and I got connected with Diabetes Sisters at that time. And um, I just remember that being such a huge thing I was grateful to find at the time because,
Mm,
like I mentioned before, you just feel like nobody really understands what you live with every
yeah.
day. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not one to like feel, oh, woe is me, but I just so important that you hang out with other people to get it.
Yeah.
And so that made a big impact on me. It gave me different questions to ask my doctors, different ways to advocate for myself, and then just developing relationships with other women that get it. And so when I moved back to Iowa to be closer to family about 5 years ago, and I just noticed, I missed that. And then there's such a gap. I can't tell you how many times I'd be working and on an appointment and someone noticed my CGM. And
Mm,
I just realized how much women need each other in this
yeah.
space. And so I decided that it's time that I kind of take a step up and start volunteering too. So I now host a once a month meetup every first Saturday of the month. So, and
Oh,
it's been,
nice.
and it's for both type 1 and 2. They just this year, they started some sessions if you want to to be just in a certain type. So they offer different
Okay.
ones throughout the month, but my particular one will always have both types in it.
I like that. Yeah. That's really good. We'll definitely link a way for them to check out more about joining. This is a free online organization. All the meetups are online right now. Are there any
They
in person? I'm not sure what.
I think there are some that have like a hybrid approach.
Okay.
I'd have to check and see. There's several different hosts like
Okay.
me, so I
Okay.
can't tell you off the top of my head who that might be,
Yeah.
but where they have it online as well as meeting in place. But
Yeah.
yeah, right
Right.
now
Yeah.
it's mostly
Something.
online. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 that's what I've understood. And it's something for everybody. And yeah, their website's got just a host of resources. I do some workshops on there for them as well and write articles. And it's just it's something we need. I got plugged in and it's 2008 is when this is when it first started. The founder, Brandy Barnes,
Uh-huh.
was she had just started. It was 2008. It might have started a little sooner than that, but that's when it found me and I got plugged in. It was very small at that point. So we're talking, what's that, 18 years? So yeah, I've been part of it as well. And then there was a local meetup here, well, actually Jacksonville, which is about 45 minutes away. And so I got plugged in with a community up there. But that was my first connection with other women with diabetes. Isn't that incredible? I mean, it was over 30 years living with type 1, and I finally got into a space with other women. And I'll be honest, I think at first it was, I think I was still trying to figure out who I was with this disease. Believe it or not, I was in my,
Oh,
late 30s, I guess. And but I think but I kept coming back, which is good, right? I just kept saying, "Oh, this is something I need. This is something but developing those relationships. These are women that I still connect with and, reach
yeah.
out to. And then I started to host an in-person here in St. Augustine where I live. And then things changed and then everything kind of went online. And now I just pop into some of your meetups online. So yeah, I highly recommend Diabetes Sisters there. It's a great organization. It's really, really working hard to keep, to bring us together and to keep us together for sure. Really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a really great thing.
So let's say I'm going to kind of go back. Before we go today, I want to maybe paint a picture of where you are because you talked about because you're on the Omnipod 5. You and I are using the same pump system. And are you on a Dexcom?
I am. Yep, G7.
Yeah, Dexcom. Okay. Yeah, that's right. You and I are on the same exact thing. That's right, right, right. Well, the G6 is getting ready to kind of transition out. So I know there's still some people that are going to make that transition. Have you had a lot of issues with the system kind of talking to each other and all of that?
Yeah. I had a lot of trouble when the G7 first came out, but I didn't realize that I had a lot of sensor stale, and I didn't realize at the time that I should be wearing it on my arm and no longer on my abdomen. And that made all the difference.
Interesting.
Yeah. And maybe everybody's different, but I also noticed that they only recommend it on the arm now. So,
I didn't
and
even
that's
know that. Oh my
yeah.
gosh. That
Yeah.
is funny. That's a memo I didn't get because again, we're
Yeah.
so overwhelmed with all these things that they're doing, recommendations. I go back and forth every 10 days.
Yeah.
I like it. It's easy. I don't feel it. I don't notice it. It's and if there's times you don't want to show it and you want to put a sleeve on, it's okay, whatever that circumstances might be. But it's interesting. So I didn't realize that they were just recommending the arm now, or they're
Yeah.
they're recommending it. It's not, because I know of some wearers that are wearing it all over the body, and I continue to just be thinking about other areas. It's kind
Yeah.
of like with my Omnipod 5, tend to be either my stomach or my arm. So where's your favorite place to wear your Omnipod 5,
Yeah.
your
Mostly
pod?
I'll wear it like on the front of my
On your
arm or the back.
arms?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's changed. Maybe it was at the time the tech person said, just make sure you wear it on your arm. Maybe that's changed over time where you can wear it on your
Yeah,
stomach.
yeah,
But I just have never
yeah.
gone there again because I had so many
That's funny.
failures.
Right? It goes to show you stick with what works, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I used to
Well,
do like on boobs and everywhere. So
oh, that's interesting because, and you're going to have to hold me accountable or keep asking me because I want to try my legs. I mean, I've just got this again. My mind just can't go there yet. But I'm curious, and I guess the good part is it only lasts 3 days, right? Because
Yeah.
it's one of those good, bad thing with the pods. It's like, "Oh gosh, 3 days is up already," but at least if it's in a place that you're not happy with, well, 3 days is up. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can celebrate the 3 days when it's over. But, again, it's just a good example of, we just gotta try and experiment
Yeah.
and see how the body
And
responds to it, and, yeah,
yeah.
really good. Yeah,
Oh, and
yeah,
I guess just for clarity, I guess I was more talking about this Dexcom on my arms, but I've worn the pod. Like I wear that on my abdomen a lot.
all over. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And my
yeah.
arms. So
Yeah. 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 Is there any final thoughts as far as, where you're going right now as far as your hormones? Is there anything that's on kind of your radar right now as far as something that you're looking close at, right? That you're still kind of monitoring? We're recording this at the end of March. So again, we're not holding you to anything, but I like the fact that we can kind of date this and say, Alyssa, we can check back with you. So how
yeah.
is it how are things going right now?
Yeah, I actually went through a really tough season these first 3 months of the year because I was traveling, got a new job,
Yeah.
nothing has been normal, and then on top of that, trying to figure out progesterone and doses of things like that, and my thyroid medicine.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a fresh start and things are kind of getting more routine. So just looking forward to getting back in the groove of, regular exercise, strength training, and then that, clean eating component. Because when I'm doing all three of those things, I really notice a big difference in how I feel.
Isn't it? Isn't that
Yeah.
yeah, it really is, yeah, all those things that we know we need to do, and I think that's the positive reminder, I think we have to keep reflecting on, well, last week, Monday through Thursday, I was on target, I was in town, I wasn't traveling, all the things that we can hope happen and say, "Ah, everything was pretty consistent," and then we could even go back to our data and say, "Everything was pretty consistent, I sure was sleeping well." To me, that's the best motivator.
Yeah.
And if we can have any say in what our schedule is, reinforcement, it's just that it's that daily reminder. It's like, okay, well, this felt good. Let me see if I can come close to that again today, and just it's like, okay, repeat, 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 right?
Right. And I, in a strange way, this sounds odd, but I do feel somewhat grateful for this um,
Mm,
disease just because I think it's made me more in tune with that connection of how, certain habits of eating can really make a big
yeah,
difference. I don't think some of those things would have been on my radar before. And so it's
that's
kind of
so
forced
true.
me to
Yeah.
figure that out and be more in tune with my body.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only with type 1 diabetes, this is what I'm
Mhm.
hearing, but also with the hormone changes. It is good. Symptoms are good. I mean, they are. And, they're a pain in
Yeah.
the neck sometimes and they don't feel good, but it is our body speaking to us. And it's just a
Mhm.
matter of how we want to hear it and, respond and seek help. So you are a
Yeah.
perfect example of that. Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the women listening right now who may be feeling overwhelmed, I think they got a lot from just what you were able to come in and share and speak on, and feel like she's doing all the right things. You mentioned that you do. It's like, wait a minute, it used to work. It's no longer working. What's changed? What would you want her to walk away with today as far as how can she keep going?
I think if you start trying to change everything at once, maybe just think of one thing at a time to
Mm,
help instead of tackling everything at once. And just giving yourself grace
yeah.
overall.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a great takeaway. Yeah, yeah, we are doing more than the average person every day.
Yes.
This is not a part-time disease; it's a full-time disease. But I think we can. I think it's important to kind of keep it in perspective and to just like you say, just acknowledge what we are doing, what we're able to do, what we get to do, and
Mhm.
and again, the people we get to meet along the way. I'm real thankful
Yeah.
to have met you, Alyssa.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah. Do you have any final thoughts before we say goodbye today?
Nope. I'm just so grateful to have connected and yeah, just glad to be in this space.
Yeah, same here. So, how can our listeners connect with you in the future? And I did mention Diabetes Sisters, so we'll be sure to let them know how to join one of your meetups. You said once a month on a Saturday, so
Yep. It's the first Saturday. Yep.
first Saturday.
Usually at 10 a.m. Central Time, and
Okay.
you can find that by going to diabetessisters.org and going to the meetup events, and you'll find me.
Just
And you
kind
just
of
have to
locate
register,
you
and you're
there.
in. Yeah,
Right, right. Perfect. Yeah, super easy and accessible. And you
yeah,
have women from all over. So I think that's another thing that's because that might, women don't understand is that this is not a demographic thing. I mean, these meetups, it's really about your availability.
yeah,
And then when you get into a group, I'm sure there's women in your group that are connected. They feel joined with you all. It really is coming in a meeting and developing those relationships. And that takes time. And, all of
yeah.
that just kind of flourishes over time. And people like you that are leading these groups, what is it's just such a great organization. Really, really proud to be able to share and talk about it here on the show. So
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
you.
And I think the biggest thing too is if it can be a little intimidating to join a group or come in to
Yeah.
but I'd encourage you not to be. We have people that are super introverted and they just like to sit back and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really just meant to be a discussion, and so you don't feel alone. And
Yeah.
wherever you are with your personality, just come and join and participate how you feel comfortable.
Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks again. And, again, just look at the show notes here if you want to connect more. There's an easy link there to jump on board with Diabetes Sisters. Again, thanks, Alyssa. And I know you and I will continue to be in coach. And our Type 1 and Midlife coaching circle is open for members. So check out more or send me a message and I'll give you some more information about that. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
And we'll be back in here same time next week.
Thanks, Melissa.